Fanalysis combines the data made popular in fantasy football with the latest sports betting trends, and we find you the sharpest angles. And for that, we bring in the lead betting analyst from Pickswise, Jared Smith. Happy Week 11 to you, Jared.
Very exciting. Jets are back this week.
Yeah, the
Can
Jets
they win in New England?
Well, that's definitely something we're going to have to dive into. But I feel like one of the games that a lot of people are talking about is the one that we want to start with, and that's that Cowboys and the Vikings game. Minnesota, 1.5-point home dogs. This is an 8-1 team that Vegas just can't get behind. So are you buying or selling the hot dogs?
I'll be honest. I think this is one of those lines that if you asked me what my bread and butter is as an NFL handicapper, this is a line that I would present to you, because perception doesn't match reality. It's the eye test against the data test. And you know where we like to land when those two things go against each other. So the eye test says, well, the Vikings just went into Buffalo and beat the best team in the NFL. And the Cowboys just blew a 2-touchdown lead to Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. And we saw how good that offense is on Thursday night against the Titans. So why is this line kind of skewing in the favor of Dallas, despite the fact that, again, the eye test tells us Minnesota should be the quote-unquote better side? Well, let's dive a little deeper beneath just the final scores of those games. Dallas absolutely dominated Green Bay for 3 quarters. And it took a couple of interceptions, a couple of miscommunications between Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, and then, of course, Aaron Rodgers pulling a rabbit out of his hat, something he hasn't done all year. And on the other side, the Vikings were getting pretty much dominated in that game against Buffalo. Interception in the red zone by Josh Allen, fumble on the goal line, and then all of a sudden, Justin Jefferson makes one of the most absurd catches maybe in the history of the NFL, and Minnesota wins that game. So while the reality is Minnesota's 8-1, they're 7-0 in one-score games, the perception to me, I think, doesn't quite match that. And the ratings, the odds makers, I trust them more than I trust the public, and they're telling me Dallas is the better side here.
Okay, you made a mention of it right there. The Vikings have won 7 straight. They've all come in one-score games, and we just saw what Justin Jefferson did. I mean, this guy looks like an absolute incredible talent at receiver. So the question is, what's that matchup between Trayvon Diggs and Justin Jefferson really look like, and can the Cowboys really slow him down in any way?
So Dallas plays this very unique style of defense. It's a very aggressive style, and they're going to let Trayvon just kind of do his thing out there on Justin Jefferson. And actually, Trayvon got the better of this matchup last year. And it's funny because these two have a history. Alabama, LSU. They played in college. They've now played in the pros, so they know each other very well. And I think the key for Minnesota this week, especially, can they protect Kirk Cousins? Because in order for Justin Jefferson to be effective in this game, Kirk Cousins has to have time to throw. Christian Darrisaw, limited in practice this week with a concussion. He's grading out actually as the best left tackle in the league. That might surprise you at this stage of the season. But I'll be honest, I think the key here is the Cowboys' defensive ends, Anthony Barr. We know about Lawrence and Micah Parsons. But Anthony Barr, the former Viking, who was basically cast aside during free agency, he's trending in a positive direction from a hamstring injury. If Barr's back on the field, he didn't play against the Packers. Dan Quinn had to tweak his scheme a little bit. If Barr plays, not only is it a revenge game, but it allows Micah Parsons to go back to his natural spot on the edge. And if Christian Darrisaw can't go, Kirk Cousins is going to be under a lot of pressure in this game.
Yeah, I think that Anthony Barr thing is really an interesting point because, I mean, you think that he's going to be motivated to play against his former team. And as you said perfectly, it's that it puts Parsons in the right spot and they don't have to adjust the defense. And we know the type of pressure that Micah Parsons can bring on any team with or without the best left tackle in the NFL that he's going up against. Let's go to the AFC West here, where the Raiders are taking on the Broncos. This spread is 2.5 right now, but this is really a battle of two terrible offenses. The over/under is 41.5. If there was ever going to be an over/under that you were going to be taking a close eye, taking a good look at this, would this be the one?
Yeah, and again, this is one of those games. And last week I was on the Raiders Colts under, and my theory, you can call it a, cockamamie theory, but if you feel like you trust your handicap and the result of the bet doesn't work out, but there were some extenuating circumstances that you didn't account for, if the number and the situation warrants it the following week, go right back to it. Don't let recency bias skew you away from what I thought was a good handicap last week on the Raiders offense, which is a struggle bus right now. And this is a Raiders offense that goes from 28 points per game at home down to 18 on the road. They were at home last week. They only scored 20 in that game. And the Matt Ryan surprise reinsertion to the starting lineup really changed the tenor of that Raiders Colts game. Matt Ryan had his best game of the year, completion percentage and rating wise. And of course, the game goes over by a field goal on a fourth quarter touchdown throw by Matt Ryan. So I like the handicap on this Raiders team. I think they're an under. They're a sell down the stretch offensively. And then, oh, by the way, this week they're on the road against the Denver Broncos offense. I don't think there are words or adjectives in the English language to describe it. Steve, last week against the Titans, they had a 9-play drive that spanned 14 yards.
Oh, my God.
That defies
How is that even
the
possible?
laws of I don't know, but I looked at the box score. I had to look at 3 different box scores to make sure it wasn't a typo, and it wasn't. It was.
How many penalties? Were like 3 penalties on that drive?
Yeah, run for a yard, then a sack, then an incompletion, then a penalty, then this. I mean, it was a mess. And that's kind of what this Broncos offense is right now. And then to make matters worse, we're reading this week that Russell Wilson, and I don't know if this is true, but the report is pretty entertaining. If it is true, then it's really bad, that he's using Seahawk audibles at the line of scrimmage, not Broncos code words, Seahawks code words.
Forget where he is.
I don't know how to explain. Again, there are no adjectives in the English language to accurately describe what's happening with the Broncos offense this season. But on the other side, the defense is playing well, top 5 in EPA per play, top 10 schedule adjusted efficiency. So I have a Raiders offense, which is a sell, I think, down the stretch without Waller, without Renfro. And oh, by the way, Davante Adams limited in practice this week. Keep an eye on that. And then we have this Denver Broncos offense, which again, an absolute sell. At home this year, they're averaging 11 points per game. So if you take the Raiders total 18 on the road, you take the Broncos total 11 at home. Hopefully this one stays comfortably under 41.5.
I just see Russell Wilson now so delusional that he's dreaming that DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are on the outside that he's throwing to, and those guys are like, what? What is going on here? But speaking of more of a personal tone, I mean, Derek Carr was actually in tears after that loss to the Colts game, and he called his teammates out after this one. So you have to wonder whether or not this could be a motivating factor to try to light a spark under this Raiders team. And let's be honest, the only way that they're really going to be able to put points on the board is staying on the ground. Denver Broncos defense, as good as it is actually ranked 26th in yards per carry defensively. So if there is a way to get to Denver, it's got to be on the ground. And Jacobs is a big boy. He can run the ball very well.
Kind of funny because I think a lot, like I was looking at some of the rushing numbers for the Chiefs and I was like, wow, they haven't really given up a lot of rushing yards this year. Well, that's because teams are always behind against Patrick Mahomes and they're always trying to pass. That might be the case with Denver because of how bad their offense has been. Teams know we could just pound the rock right at you. We're not really worried about, Russell Wilson putting up a bunch of points and us falling behind the 8 ball. So I am fascinated to see what the game plan is for the Raiders this week because Josh Jacobs, to me, is really the only consistent weapon that you can call on to make any, ends meet against what has been a very feisty Broncos defense, especially at home. Now we'll see what the home field advantage is. I mean, we saw Denver fans walking out on the team in earlier games this season, and I'm sure there's not a lot of positive vibes right now in the Mile High City. One thing to keep an eye on too, Jerry Jeudy's ankle injury likely will keep him out this week. Again, we don't know for sure, but you just keep taking these chess pieces off the board with Jeudy and Waller and Renfro, and now the abdomen injury for Davante Adams, and I just don't see a lot of explosion happening in this game. Of course, it's football; anything can happen. Fluke plays, turnovers, fumbles, special teams, but offensively speaking, I don't see a ton of movement happening.
And to try to expect that Derek Carr is going to be the man that's going to lead your team. I mean, he's had some good numbers, obviously, in the past, but he's lost twice as many games in his NFL career as he's won. So Stop trying to make Derek Carr happen. It's not happening. Speaking of teams that are just continually getting beat up right now, this other AFC West game here between the Chargers and the Chiefs, I mean, this is looking like a little bit of a war of attrition here. The Chiefs are favored by 4.5, but by the way, you can certainly move that line if you want to move it, but the Chargers could be getting guys back. Two receivers could be back in the fold. Both guys, then Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, both excel against Kansas City. So at least the Chargers look like they could be getting healthy while the Chiefs are getting unhealthy.
Yeah, MVS is the one receiver that looks like he might be on track with, his illness. But Juju already ruled out, and Mecole Hardman on IR. So you're starting to see a little bit thinning of the herd. And listen, Patrick Mahomes could probably hit the hot dog guy if he was open. That's how good he's been this year. But on the other side, we've seen how different this Chargers offense is without Mike Williams. Since he went out of the lineup with a high ankle sprain in Week 7, LA 26th in EPA per play, 28th in success rate on offense. And that is very uncharacteristic of Justin Herbert and what has been a very potent and efficient offense throughout his brief career. He's played really well against this Chiefs team. This has been one of the best divisional matchups in football since he came into the league 3 years ago. Herbert doesn't quite get over the hump win-loss wise, but he is 3-1 against the spread when facing off against Patrick Mahomes, 4-1 overall against the Chiefs. The caveat being one of those games was last week of the season when, Kansas City was resting all their starters. And I know that's not a huge sample size, but let's widen it a little bit. Justin Herbert as an underdog, 9-5 against the spread in his career. As a dog of 3 points or more, 7-1. So he excels in the role of nobody thinks we can win. Let's go out and prove people wrong. It's the favorite role where, it's been an issue, I think, for this Chargers team over the years. And Keenan Allen, listen, I don't know how you get more injured during the bye week, but I really am questioning what his situation is. I hope he plays. I think Mike Williams definitely will play. Keenan Allen, to me, is more of the question mark and just how effective and what kind of snap counts we're going to see. The matchup to watch in this game, though, Derwin James on Travis Kelce. Whenever Derwin James is on the field against the Chiefs, Travis Kelce has not scored a touchdown. And in the Week 2 game, 5 catches, 51 yards, 7 targets, well below what we're normally used to seeing with Travis Kelce production-wise. So I think some of the matchups here really favor the Chargers. I like the fact that they're getting these wide receivers back, and I think getting 6 points, very favorable bet for me this week.
Okay, so right now most of the lines are saying 4.5. You can get it at 6.5 a couple of places. Is this one of those where you really want to shop for the best line, or do you want to try to move the line to 6.5? Is that how much you believe in that number?
I'll be honest. I think anything over 4 is a bet for me.
So you're okay at 4.5?
Yeah, obviously I'd rather have as many points as possible. And there's a chance if, there's some sharp buyback in the market later this week, this moves back. But I like to trust the initial moves. The initial move here off of 7, very bullish towards the Chargers. Once I saw that, I immediately jumped into the market at 6.5, and it's trickled down since. I'm fine with anything at, I would say, 5 or higher. I really do think the Chargers are a live dog in this game. And obviously, you always want to shop around and get as many points as possible. But this is a spot where I think LA can pull off the win. They need this game a lot more. They've already lost to Kansas City in the standings. They've actually lost 2 out of 3 overall. And right now, if the playoffs started today, they would be out.
Well, if that's the case, then take a closer look at that money line. Why not? Chargers and Chiefs, by the way, lead the league in pass attempts, so we expect to see a lot of throwing in this game. That's how he values his best bets of the week. Make sure you check out our other segment where he focuses on the Jets and the Giants. For Jared Smith of Pickswise, I'm Steve Overmyer. This is Fanalysis.